Many education systems in this world do not teach creative problem solving. And the fact of the matter is that like, what do I do when I'm bored? That is creative problem solving. I work on this a lot with clients, is like, what do you just do with your time? How do you figure out who to spend time with? How do you, figure out what you want to do to make yourself feel energized when you don't have somebody there to spend your time with? That is a creative problem solving skill. And creative problem solving is a very, very, very different skill and a very practical skill from, these sort of like technical skills that there's much more focus on when you're training to be an idol. Hello, and welcome to Stray Kids, the Megaverse YouTube version. My name is Lullaby B. I am a therapist and clinical social worker, and this is my new standard YouTube introduction. You see, ever since I started streaming on Twitch, I've become very, very bad at remembering to do any sort of basic introduction for the when I transfer the recordings from Twitch to YouTube. So now I am putting in this rote introduction. Please watch it at least once. You don't need to watch it more than once, though. Like I said, my name is Lullaby B. First of all, and very importantly, if you happen to be one of my clients and you have found me, don't watch my K-pop content. Please don't watch my K-pop content. If you feel a deep and overwhelming need to watch my K-pop content, please talk to me first so that we can make sure that it is a clinically not inappropriate decision for you. Second of all, if you're watching my K-pop content and somehow you figure out who I am, which would probably not be that difficult, but you do so, please don't request me to be your therapist. That would be an inappropriate introduction to a therapist. Those disclaimers aside, if you're watching this, you are probably a number of videos into a reaction series, probably the Two Kids Room reaction series. I don't know how long this introduction is going to last, whether it's going to last beyond that or not. So I guess, I don't know. But if you are somewhere in a series of reaction videos from me, I might recommend going back to the beginning of the series, or at least watching episodes of the same people of whatever this episode is. I talk about a lot of stuff and I refer back to a lot of things because, as you notice, this is very long form content. That doesn't mean you necessarily have to, but there might be certain things that are very confusing or don't make sense to you if you haven't seen any of my prior content. Another disclaimer, I am not making this content for stray kids. If for some really bizarre reason you happen to be a stray kid, or happen to be somebody who feels very, very protective about how we talk about or refer to stray kids or think about them, this is going to be a lot of me analyzing words, relationships, behaviors, and trying really, really hard not to make assumptions about like inner workings of anyone's mind or like doing psychodynamic analysis or anything like that, but it might still be uncomfortable. So my recommendation is that if you're watching this and you're just uncomfortable and all you are is uncomfortable, don't. But if you're watching this and you are both uncomfortable but also interested or also fascinated by something, maybe it indicates a place for growth and opportunity to learn a little bit more, in which case maybe interact with it on a small scale. A reasonable scale for whatever your comfort level is. I bring up in these series a lot of potentially triggering, potentially complex conversations, and I don't really shy away from a lot of things, though I do try to put appropriate content warnings if something really feels like it gets to a point of potentially like being really triggering as a surprise to people. But overall, this is an analysis of a lot of things that might be difficult to experience. So take your time if you need to take your time. But yes, other than that, most of this is educational content, leveraging and using media that is well known and understood. As I said on one of my very, 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 very first reaction videos, what I'm doing a lot of is saying, if I were in the place of a therapist, these are the questions I would have about this situation, and maybe some of the things I would recommend in somebody seeking assessment, diagnosis, or talking further to a therapist if they're experiencing something similar. So this is a lot about what you as Stay might relate to in the kids and how that might be beneficial for you. I'm really, really, really honored that a number of people have told me that my series has helped convince them to seek therapeutic services or diagnostics themselves, or they've really discovered a lot about themselves or other people watching this, and that's really why I'm doing this. So I don't want anybody to be confused in me in thinking that I'm trying to say that anybody is that I'm trying to diagnose people for the sake of entertainment. I'm trying to identify traits that people might relate to in order to be an educational resource for them. That all being said, this is free educational resources. If my content is helpful for you, you could subscribe on Twitch. I'd really appreciate a subscription here because I can't monetize until I have 1,000 subscribers on YouTube. You can also support my Supercast if you would like to set up a monthly recurring type of Patreon-esque thing. Overall, I really, really try not to paywall like any of my content, so I don't have a lot of like special things for people who give me money over people who don't, because I really don't want to paywall content. But if you do decide to give me money and you have thoughts about what could be useful for supporters, you're always free to let me know. And with that, I do believe I've said everything that I need to say. Love you. Thank you so much, Stay. And let's get on with whatever this video is.
아이고, 그대와의 추억이 담긴 곳이구만.
Oh god, there's gonna be so much flirting, isn't there?
우리가 조금의 마찰.
I'm trying to remember what I know about. It's been so long since Union Beating came out. I think I only know like one thing. Yeah, I don't think I know anything about Union Beating, so I'm going into this quite cold.
달이 있던 후에 바로 퀴즈룸을 찍었을 때 그게 있습니다. 재밌었죠.
It was fun. We had an argument and then made up. It was fun.
잊지 못할 날이죠. 저 없이는 못 살아야 한다고.
제가요? 이거 하면서?
I thought he remembered everything. There's like this whole thing that they always go through about how Hyunjin remembers like everything that's happened. He just doesn't remember how he feels about any of it. Like everybody says like Hyunjin has great memory of scenarios and apparently does not remember this. My guy. Also, Changbin, chill.
아우, 이때 잘생겼네, 나. 이때도 잘생겼네.
생각보다 같이 찍은 사진이 많네요. 귀엽네요. 이거 그때 뮤직뱅크인가? 뮤직뱅크 1위 공약하려고 이렇게 선글라스. 이거는 또 제가 봤을 땐 시상식이겠네요. 느낌이. 이건 환승연애 제가 몰래 이렇게 바람 피는 장면을 찍었던. 이때 현진이 모습을 또 보고 싶기는 해요. 또 보고도 싶고. 이거 완전 좀 청순하게 몰래 연애하는 듯한 CC 느낌도 있고.
저는 아무래도
Changmin, my guy, you gotta chill. You gotta play it more cool. Like, we know how aggressively in love with your husband, wife you are. You can chill a little bit.
제 방에서 했던 현이빈이가 가장 기억에 남습니다. 재밌었거든요. 이때가 그거잖아요.
So he doesn't remember being like, oh, I wouldn't be able to live without Changbin, but he does remember slapping him in the thigh. Oh my god, my guy.
응? 뭘 봐, 이 자식아. 이놈의 키지. 하나, 둘, 째.
How goes the anthropomorphization of random animal-like stuffies, Changbin? How goes that? That's one of those things that I see you know, when people do that and they know there's cameras around, it's like, are they just trying to think of something entertaining to do for the cameras? Or is this how they act? Because it really could be either in situations like this. You know, one of the, like, key ways of keeping things entertaining on camera in, especially in, like, reality TV, right, is to basically just always say out loud whatever you're thinking, with, you know, some obvious limitations, but that's sort of the hack around keeping things interesting and engaging for editors. So there's an extent to which you can finagle this in person like this by basically impulsively doing whatever comes to your mind. In a room like this, I mean, I'm kind of surprised he didn't start lifting the weights, but, like, maybe he didn't look around enough. I don't know. You know, they've clearly placed a lot of things in these rooms. This is, like, obviously a little bit more on, like, the production side of things, but they've obviously placed a lot of things around this room to make it visually appealing. But I think that some of the other reason why they've placed so many things around this room and, you know, had such a, you know, have a similar type of, like, setup in the second room where everybody's like, why is there a bed in here? And, like, things like that, is to give the opportunity for the actors, in this case, right, for the kids, to do things impulsively to create interesting storytelling, even if that storytelling is really short, right? So there's a lot of things to play with. There's a lot of things to mess around with. There's a lot of places to sit, right? So there's a lot of ways to set up different stories depending both on what the kids themselves want, but also what the producers and editors find interesting afterwards. So that's just something I'm thinking about. Like, with this Stuffy, is it just that he's looking around and he is sort of impulsively doing whatever comes to mind? Or is he, like, engaging in something that he would be engaging with whether or not there were cameras there? And, like, the anthropomorphization of something like this is, like, a more natural state for him.
안녕.
뭐야, 떡이다.
너 스케줄은 찍을 때.
Something else that I always want people to remember when watching these types of things. So we don't really know who writes the subtitles. Obviously, there's a lot of conversation about subtitle skijigi. I suspect there are. I have a theory. I have no reason. I have nothing real to base this theory on, but I have a theory. I know that Chan used to mess with subtitles a lot, and I have a feeling that some subtitles are in fact made by the kids, or that there is at least some input put in there. Because if that's not the case, and it could be that that's not the case, then what we're actually watching is a lot of us being led into a narrative, right? Because we get a lot of things like this subtitle, playing alone, ... not fun, where that is playing into Changbin's mind. So either Changbin at some point expressed that to whomever is part of editing this, or Changbin put it in there himself, or it's being made up. And it's part of a narrative that we are being pulled into, because we, you know, if it is something that's just being written there, that's supposedly like what he's thinking. If nobody asked him what he was thinking there, then it's just being made up. And so pretty much any time we see these types of, like, captioned subtitles, I would be really hesitant about taking them as truth as to what the person is thinking, versus what narrative we are being told to buy into.
안녕.
뭐야, 떡이다.
너 스케줄룸 찍을 때 애들이랑
Yeah, whereas like something like this is a little bit more of a like something that they noticed but distracted by something else. But even that, like, I don't know how much he was distracted versus like he walked into a room and noticed something. It's not like there was an actual conversation happening. So even that is a little bit of like pulling us into the narrative of Hyunjin being highly distractible. So even things like that, like anytime you notice something like that, ask yourself what narrative you're being pulled into, because it's being done purposefully.
너 스케줄룸 찍을 때 애들이랑 찍을 때 이렇게 옆에서 딱 붙어서 했어?
Oh my god.
난 붙은 거 처음인데.
왜? 어디서 하는데?
나 저기하고.
The first time feeling human warmth in a while. Jesus. Ads start in 44 seconds. So I'm gonna take a pause and see. Okay, there's nothing going on in chat. Cool. Changbin is feeling human warmth for the first time in a while, aka 2 hours.
붙어서 했어? 응. 난 붙은 거 처음인데.
I'm pretty sure that's not true. I'm pretty sure Hyunjin did not sit this close to everybody. Whatever.
왜? 어디서 하는데?
나 저기하고 영부 여기 갖고.
다 형이랑 떨어져 있고 싶은 거야?
내가 떨어진 거니?
왜 안 떨어져?
네가 왔잖아. 여러분, 제가 먼저 들어왔습니다. 얘가 먼저 제 옆에 붙어 앉았어요.
아니, 난 떡 먹으러 온 거야.
증거가 다 여기 찍혔다. 결국엔 이런 거죠, 여러분. 그거 같은데? 숙소 같은데? 약간 지금 뭔가 숙소의 거실에서 소파에서 TV를 보는 그런 느낌의 얘기를 하는 듯한 느낌으로 가잖아.
피지크.
What does that mean? What is that that's being searched on the TV? Are there gym channels? I need to ask somebody who knows what the fuck the searching physique on the TV is going to lead you to, because I am befuddled.
뭐 포징, 오늘 가슴 운동 루틴, 등 하부 잡는 방법 이런 거 이제 또 필 받아.
Oh, are they just like on YouTube or something looking up how to work out? Like, oh my god, you fucking dorks. They're such gym bros. And like, I don't want to admit that in the core of my soul, but they really are such gym bros. Like, they have such himbo energy, and I know so many nerdy gym bros. Like, being in Seattle means just being surrounded by nerdy people who go to the gym a lot, which I used to be one of. Like, one of my closest friends who I played D&D with, I met at the gym. Like, this is the level of gym broness in Seattle. And they just remind me so much of so many people.
가서 또 운동하러 가죠.
운동하러 갔다 와서.
I'm sorry, so they watch... I need to make fun of them. I'm sorry, I can't not. They watch men working out in order to motivate themselves to get up and work out at like 10 p.m. That's so silly. I love them so much. They're like, that could be us. I just can't find the entertainment value in watching other people work out. I'm gonna be honest.
이제 야식 먹고
아 그리고 내가 또 그 숙소에서 이제 또 거실을 내가 점령을 하잖아. 네, 제가 방에는 잠잘 때만 들어가고 뭐 게임할 때만 방에 있고.
나 소파를 괜히 좋은 걸 샀어.
왜? 너무 좋은데.
그래도 형이랑 그 잠 자는 시간이 비슷해서 참 다행이라고 생각해.
뭐 생활의 그런 방식은 다르지만 생활 패턴이 좀 비슷하니까 그래서 좀 편안한 면이 있지. 서로 뭔가 방해되는 부분은 딱히 없는 것 같아. 내가 방해가 되니?
가끔
언제?
방해 안 돼.
방에 좀 가 있을까 그러면?
맨날 배달 음식 시키면 배달 음식 내가 가져오라고 할 때.
아 그거?
근데 걱정하지 마. 한 번도 가져다
가져올
준
일
적
없어,
없으니까. 숙소에서 뭐 이렇게 서로 막 이렇게 합의 봐야 되는 것도 없고 지 편한 대로 사는 사람 둘이 만나서 지 편한 대로 살고 있는 숙소입니다.
집에 있나?
Yeah, this is one of the things that like when you know somebody. Ooh, actually, let me see Binny's perspective if it's slightly different.
확인하게 되고 집에 없으면 어디 갔나 확인하게 되고 저 마누라 같은데요?
우리
Okay,
이사
never mind. Not that different. This is one of those things that just really is true that when you really, really know somebody, and I think they've roomed together before, haven't they, in like much tighter spaces. You don't necessarily need agreements to like come up with every single part of your life because you're just always making, I've talked about the micro adjustments before. You're just always sort of making micro adjustments. You end up making a lot of like informal rules. Like if, for instance, if, Hyunjin was like, I actually hate that you always tell me to go get the food. That would be sort of like an informal agreement. And that's just like normal communication boundaries, etc. I think some people believe that you need really like hard and fast formal rules to live with somebody. And they can be really helpful if you don't have good communication patterns. If you don't have clear communication patterns, it can be really helpful to delineate chores by person if you're still getting to know each other well, or if there's significant conflict around certain types of chores or certain parts of maintaining the household or things like that. But overall, if you have really clear, consistent communication patterns, generally you don't need to do things like that because it does sort of come as part of the natural territory.
배달 음식 내가 가져오라고 할 때.
아 그거?
근데 걱정하지 마. 한 번도 가져다
가져올 일
준 적
없어,
없으니까. 숙소에서 뭐 이렇게 서로 막 이렇게 합의 봐야 되는 것도 없고 지 편한 대로 사는 사람 둘이 만나서 지 편한 대로 살고 있는 숙소입니다.
집에 있나 확인하게 되고 집에 없으면
He's so
어디 갔나
wistful.
확인하게 되고.
It's really clear which one of them is the more sociable, I'll say. I'm trying to avoid the terms extroverted and introverted because there's so much as many of us know, I am in a constant battle against MBTI. I'm in a constant ongoing battle against the entirety of Myers-Briggs Institute. And I am losing, but I refuse to end my battle. People have ideas about what extroverted and introverted means, and they're not even like really well-defined psychological terms. They're very vague and they're very inconsistent, and you sort of talk to any three people about what they think those terms mean, and you'll probably get three different answers. So I'm trying to avoid introvert, extrovert, ambivert, because I just don't think it's very clear as far as what I'm trying to say. But I'll sort of say, like, Changbin has expressed that he is, becoming less over, less like talking a lot to a lot of different people and making a lot more friends, and more focusing on the friends he already has. And in the past, he's sort of like moved between whether he considers himself like more or less introverted, as it were. But he is more sociable than Hyunjin, who has, you know, clearly stated that he is mostly okay being alone, doing his own thing, not really giving a fuck, right? So, you know, I think that that dynamic is clear, but also, I don't know how often Changbin is seriously actually sitting there wistfully being like, oh, I miss Hyunjin. He probably does, like, get bored, and he's like, oh, I wonder if Hyunjin's home. No? Where is he? Huh, okay. And then he, like, goes to Chan's place, or he goes, right, like, he goes and hangs out with Seungmin, or whatever. He has, like, other people he's very, very close to who he can be sociable with. So, you know, maybe he really is sitting there wistfully being like, my husband is away at the war. Or, you know, maybe not. Oh yeah, someone says in chat they thought they were introverted for years and they were just autistic. Yeah, that's a pretty common... I actually know a number of people who are like, I thought I was introverted and I realized I'm an extroverted autistic. They actually really love strangers, talking to people. They get a lot of energy out of talking to people. It just really has to be like the right people, and they have to like be in the right space for it. You know, I also know a lot of people who are very, very sociable. This is especially true of a lot of the autists I know. Very, very sociable, but only within a core group of people. You know, they're very, very sociable in spaces and situations with people who they understand, who they trust, who things are consistent, and there's like less ambiguity around the interaction style. And in those situations, they really, really, really thrive with people. But they have a much harder time overall. Or people who are like really burned out, really depressed, have really high anxiety, right? Things like that. Those people might think that they're very introverted, but really they're like having a mental health issue that is restraining them from interacting with people in a way that would be natural to them at a like more regulated baseline. You know, for me personally, I'm very, very sociable for a limited period of time. I really love parallel play. I really love sitting with people in silence to an extent, but like my battery runs out. I love being around the right people in the right spaces. You know, I love going on a cabin trip with 10 of my friends for a weekend. After that weekend, I'm fucked for like 3 days, right? So like there's a lot of different spaces that people can sit in, and just based on their own energy, capacity, stimulation, the people around them, the environment, their mental health, right? There's just so many variables in how people engage with other people.
마누라 같은데요?
우리 이사하고 나서 단둘이서 딱 그날 첫날 밤?
아, 그 참 기억 남죠.
난 그때 막 했던 얘기들이 좋았어. 그리고 형 나 좀 이렇게 좀 알됐다 해줘가지고.
Are you gonna tell us what you talked about?
해가지고. 근데 형이 냅다 사랑한다고 형.
팀 얘기를 하다가 찬이 형 생각이 나가지고 사랑.
Okay, I need to start making a list of every time they bring up drunkenly calling someone and telling them they love them. Do I have any pens around me? I have so many paintbrushes, and that is not helpful. That's not what I need. How many? This is like every other fucking episode. Once again, I say to them, have you considered just telling people you love them before you're drunk? Oh, I could make a list on my PC or smartphone. You're right. However, I found a Mr. Sketch scented marker and the paper towel I use to wipe my paintbrushes on, so we're good. I don't need to remember technology exists. We have Hyunjin, and I will remember at some point the other ones, but it's so frequent. Like, just wax poetic to your friends before you're intoxicated. I promise it's worth it. Like, to everybody. You can wax poetic about your friends at any point. And if your friends judge you for that, I don't understand those friends. Usually people really like when you express love and affection to them. That's like the most, when somebody we love expresses their love and affection for us, that feels really fucking good. So wax poetic to your friends before you're inebriated.
한다 하면서 힘내라 하면서 그렇게 했던 찬이 형 낯간지러가지고
아, 깨우냐고.
그러면서 했던
그때 했던 얘기들이 되게 그 영향가 있었어.
맞아. 뭐 초반에는 사실 그런 게 있었죠. 뭐 저는 집에 뭐 꾸며져 있는 거에 대해서
I hate that they do this to me, where they tell me that they had a really interesting conversation at some point and then I never know what it was about. I hate that they do that to me. I'm too nosy for this.
관심이 1도 없다 보니까.
근데 형은 왜 자꾸 반말 안 쓰고 존댓말을 써?
언제?
어? 몰랐어?
존댓말? 지금?
응.
지금 내가 존댓말 썼어?
존댓말 썼잖아. 있죠? 현진이랑 이렇게 하면 그런 게 있죠? 저런 게 있죠? 누가 있어 여기?
있어. 카메라 계속 있어.
그런 게 있죠. 아무튼 저는 약간 숙소를 좀 꾸미는데 좀 전념을 했었지요. 갑자기 나도 존댓말 쓰게 되는데.
아니야, 그냥 편하게 해.
근데 지금은 이제 약간 좀 더럽히는 분담을 하고 있지 내가. 내 방에 캐리어를 놓을 수가 없어.
거실로 향하는 그 통로가 좁아가지고 물건이 바깥에 나와 있는 경우는 보통 다 캐리어예요.
야, 누구랑 대화하냐고.
나 너랑 얘기하는.
You know what? That was actually, I was sort of thinking about that as it happened because that was such an interesting little thing with the formal speech. It's just like a quick intersect because I think it's a good example of the observer bias. So basically, when we know we are being observed, we may act differently. This is like something that's really important when we are doing like certain types of research. When you are studying something, when you're researching something, when you are trying to get data from people about what they do in certain situations, you have to take in consideration that they act differently when they are being observed. So this is like a great example of that, of this like formal speech of like, and the fact is that we usually don't realize we are doing it. So Changbin did not notice there that he had moved to formal speech, and Hyunjin was like, what the fuck is going on? Because like, you don't do that, I'm the only one here. But there is that back of his mind understanding that like they are being observed, and so maybe like that instinct to be more formal due to that. So just an interesting example of that there.
그 통로가 좁아가지고 물건이 바깥에 나와 있는 경우는 보통 다 캐리어예요.
야, 누구랑 대화하냐고.
나 너랑 얘기하는. 수납 공간이 생각보다 이게 계속 늘어나니까. 그래서 나 최근에 나 원래 짱구니까 맨날 똑같은 거 입잖아. 굳이 그냥 안 입는 것들 다 처분했어. 친구한테 다 줬어.
아 진짜?
친구들 다 줘가지고 이제 또 옷을 사야 되는데 너무 귀찮아. 왜 이렇게 쇼핑하는 게 왜 이렇게 귀찮니?
하루에 날 잡아서 다 하자.
저 1년에 한두 번밖에 쇼핑을 안 하는데.
형 근데 진짜 옛날에 연습생 때 진짜 옷에 미쳐있던 사람인데 형이.
맨날 엄마 떼써가지고 맨날 쇼핑하러 그랬는데 그 용인 살 때 신사까지 가가지고 그때 가로수길 또 어마어마하게 또 엄청 핫했거든. 막 명동도 가고 홍대도 가고 별의별 거 다 사고 했는데 지금은 그냥 쿠팡에서 무지 티 카라티를 그냥 검은 색깔 그것도 한 3장 똑같은 걸 시켰어.
근데 나 아직까지도 가장 그 형 내 기억에서 오래 남은 건 같이 명동 갔을 때다. 그 지하철 스트라이프 티셔츠 입고 있는 그 맨날 얘기하는.
Hyunjin has told this story so many
계속
times.
기억에 남아. 형이 그 옷핏.
And we come back to our ADHD coding. This is something that, like, this is not like in any way a diagnostic thing, but this is a very common trait of ADHD folks, is having very, very clear, specific memories of specific things that they may or may not remember telling you about over and over and over again. This is just like a really, it's a really common pattern. I have this a lot with people where I have to be like, yeah, I know you've told me that story 5 times in the last 8 months, and it's from 20 years ago. So this is the fact that we have heard this story from Hyunjin several times now is just a sort of interesting little notice, a little interest. It's part of my data as to what would happen if somebody prescribed him with Adderall. Curiosity.
진짜 좋았나 봐. 형이랑 추억이 진짜 많지.
그럼.
형은 약간 진짜 내 친형 같은 느낌이야. 성향도 잘 맞고.
맞지. 약간 진짜 승민이랑 나랑 완전 반대지. 걔는 성향이 달라서 끌리는 거고 너랑 성향이 비슷해서 끌렸던 거고.
그 뭔가 뿌리가 같은 느낌이었어 형이랑은.
아 그치.
다 성격은 완전 다르지.
성격 완전 다르지. 나는 너가 혼자서 잘 노는 게 참 존경스러워. 너는 약간 혼자서 어디 막 보러 가잖아. 혼자서 만약에 뭔가 나가게 된다? 그럼 그냥 창빈이에요. 그냥 창빈이 룩. 그냥 운동복, 편한 트레이닝복, 뭐 잠옷처럼 그냥 이렇게 나가는데 얘는 혼자 와서 뭔가 기분을 내야 된대. 얘들 해화동을 가면은
맞아.
그러니까 해화동 룩 같아? 해화동에 약간 좀 예술할 것 같은 느낌이야? 하면서 그렇게 옷을 맞춰서 입고 가요.
근데 나는 진짜 이렇게 좀 혼자 있을 때 좀 꾸미고 나가는 게 좋아. 뭔가 좀 기분 전환되잖아.
아 근데 뭐가 그래?
응. 맨날 똑같은 옷 입고 출근하잖아. 트레이닝 입고 그냥 어찌 의상 입고 내가 직접 산 내 룩을 입고 갈 수 있는 유일한 순간이야.
난 혼자서.
Oh, that's really interesting. That's a really interesting nugget there. Ooh, I need to think on that a little bit. There's a lot there. So what Hyunjin is getting at, what he's talking about is identity. Let's think back to, say, like uniforms and the concept of uniforms, and how we know that even in schools that have really rigid uniforms, people will still find a lot of ways to sort of get around this idea of uniformity. They'll find other ways to visually express their identity. So Hyunjin is sort of pointing out here that so much of his identity is based around Stray Kids, right? Is based around that stage persona that he has, which, as I've discussed several other places, is very, very different from his kind of public and social persona. And obviously we don't know how different it would be from his private persona. But it's so based around that persona. And he doesn't get the opportunity to, like, express an identity outside of that very often. Express in a visual way. And obviously he's a very visual person. He's an artist. Probably a significant amount of his identity is around visualization. An ad starts in 6 seconds. So visualization, I'll come back to that. I'm gonna asterisk. Okay, so, right, he's a very visual person. He's an artist. So a lot of his identity is going to be tied into visualization somehow, some way, and he's obviously he's really into interior design. He's really into fashion, right? Like, he shows this in multiple ways. And for somebody who has been exploring so much of like what identity is to him, and I've talked a lot about some of the things that seem to be difficult within Hyunjin's sense of self. If he has places where he feels like he can build identity that is both like physical, that he can see, right? Not just that other people can see, but that he can see. I would bet that that is really meaningful to him, to be able to sort of look in the mirror and be like, oh, this is who I can be today. He's even talked about this a little bit with hair, and like the way that hair changes and that, changes a little bit of his personality for him. Now, there is sort of the flip side to that, which is that sometimes what will happen is that people who have, who maybe struggle a little bit with a sense of self, or who have a lot of difficulty with like a cohesive sense of self, will find themselves building externally visible identities. So doing a lot, with their fashion, with their hair, with their house, maybe changing things a lot, things like that, in order to have a sense of what feels right. That because there's not a lot of sense of what feels right to them internally, there's a little bit more of like putting on an air to see if that feels right. That's not always the case by any means, but it certainly is something that also happens. So it's very interesting to sort of have him talking about, there's like a lot of directions that could mean for him, obviously, and I'm not talking to him and I don't know him. But yeah, that's just a really interesting place to unpack as to what it means to sort of be saying that part of the reason he loves dressing up so much is because he doesn't get the opportunity to dress up as himself very often. He dresses up so much as concepts, as, Hyunjin of Stray Kids, or as Hyunjin as of the Versace ambassador, or like all of these other ways where he is constantly being dressed up by others, versus when he can dress himself up, which is a much rarer experience. And then I accidentally moved things around. Where were we? Here we go.
형이랑 추억이 진짜 많지.
그럼.
형은 약간 진짜 내 친형 같은 느낌이야. 성향도 잘 맞고.
맞지. 약간 진짜 승민이랑 나랑 완전 반대지. 걔는 성향이 달라서 끌리는 거고, 너랑 성향, 편한 트레이닝복, 뭐 잠옷처럼 그냥 이렇게 나가는데, 얘는 혼자 와서 뭐 기분을 내야 된대. 얘들 해화동을 가면은.
맞아.
그러니까 해화동 룩 같아? 해화동에서 좀 약간 좀 예술할 것 같은 느낌이야? 하면서 그렇게 옷을 맞춰서 입고 가요.
근데 나는 진짜 이렇게 좀 혼자 있을 때 좀 꾸미고 나는 게 좋아. 뭔가 좀 기분 전환 되잖아.
아 근데 뭐가 그래?
응. 맨날 똑같은 옷 입고 출근하잖아. 트레이닝 입고 그냥 어찌 의상 입고. 내가 직접 산 내 룩을 입고 갈 수 있는 유일한 순간이야.
난 혼자서 할 수 있는 건 운동. 피부과도 혼자 가고 요즘.
좋아.
데모하러 혼자 가죠.
Hyunjin's so proud of him. I'm so proud of him too. I love Changbin so much, and I know everybody talks about what a green flag he is, and I think he is in many ways, and also I think he'd be a little bit insufferable to be married to, as he is at this point, because remember in the one kid's room when they were all like, oh my gosh, Changbin called the dermatologist by himself? And here he's like, oh, I can go alone to work out, sometimes go to the
피부과
dermatologist,
혼자 가고 요즘.
와,
제모하러 혼자 가죠.
다 컸네.
and for hair removal, right? Like, you don't want to be a nesting partner with someone who is still in that stage of developing their day-to-day independence. It's like this is literally what happens with a lot of like cis women in relationships with cis men, who the guys are really, really sweet and really emotionally supportive and cannot fucking do anything to make life move forward. I've seen this as a clinician a few times with clients who will have these nesting partners who, you know, are really, really supportive in many ways and, like, have no idea how to do things without their partner telling them how to do it, or without their partner being there to do it with them, right? Like, and that's just not a good life partnership to be in long term. It's something that's like kind of sustainable for a few years, but it does not work out very well. You know, sometimes it is weaponized incompetence. You know, I think a lot of times it's not. Or a lot of times it ends up being sort of this, I'm going to say like reinforced learned helplessness, wherein it's not that they learned helplessness, it's that they never had to learn how to be independent, and then it was reinforced to them that other people would manage their lives for them. And that they could get away with just being nice people and somebody else would actually manage their lives for them. And unfortunately, like, while that can work really, really well as a good friend or even a roommate, or a non-nesting partnership, the second you're in a nesting partnership in that situation, the second you have to manage another person's tax documents, right? You have to manage another person's, like, doctor's appointments. You have to make sure the groceries get purchased. Things like that. You know, in the situation they're living in, they have a lot of people doing things for them. And also, they have a lot of money to be able to solve problems with money. A lot of problems of independence can be avoided with money. So, for instance, if you just buy takeout for every single meal and then have a cleaning service you have hired, you don't necessarily have to... That's like a whole bunch of skills you never have to learn that a lot of people do. But it's definitely... Yeah, I love Changbin so much. I just also want to remind people to... In the real world, if you meet someone like Changbin who's really, really sweet and emotionally competent, but also we're praising him for calling the dermatologist by himself and, like, going to an appointment on his own, that's probably a person who is not ready to be in, like, a life nesting partnership in the real, actual world that most of us live in.
금목걸이 맞추러 혼자 가고.
오. 아, 목걸이 혼자 맞추러 갔었어?
혼자 갔지. 혼자 가서 다들 거기 아주머니들이랑 여성분들이 다 주얼리 다 고르고 있는데 나 거기서 잠깐 기다려달라고 기다리는데 뻘쭘하더라고.
형 혼자 고기 구워 먹을 수 있어?
그 밑에 그 소고기집 생겼거든. 나 혼자 구워 먹었어. 그래서 직원분이 계속 불쌍했는지 계속 와서 말 것이더라고.
형 혼자 잘 노네.
내가 혼자 놀진 못해요. 딱 밥 정도, 의식주 정도 챙길 정도죠.
아, 기특해요. 진짜 혼자서 아무것도 못했거든요, 장빈 형이. 둘이 이렇게 숙소에 있으면 난 이제 내가 할 걸 하러 가잖아요, 혼자서. 창빈이 항상 그거 약간 부러워했단 말이에요. 왜냐면 형 혼자서 뭐 취미 같은 게 딱히 없으니까 너무 심심하대요. 너무 심심해서 미치겠대요. 근데 나 이제 혼자서 하라고 가잖아요. 그럼 이제 창빈이 형이 이제 두고 가는 그 이름이 속상했죠. 근데 이제 뭐 혼자서 밥도 먹을 줄 알고 혼자 운동도 하고 그러니까 뭐 기특하죠.
That's so sweet. And I really feel for it because like I understand that, especially like God, I'm gonna say this, but this really does seem like sort of a rich kid problem. Where you just you grow up in a situation where you always have people around you, right? He grew up learning to become an idol, and you're in school, you're then going to training, you grow up with people always around you, with a family who can support you, and you're completely focused on learning certain skills that are very, very meaningful and valuable and helpful and completely not practical for day-to-day functioning, right? Like, his music skills are obviously like so important, and also they're not skills for independence. They're not problem-solving skills per se, right? I see this sometimes too, like people who are very, very skilled, and I think Chan has talked about this a little bit. I've talked about this a little bit with something Hyunjin's brought up, right? That it does happen that people become very, very good at certain things, but many education systems in this world do not teach creative problem solving. And the fact of the matter is that like, what do I do when I'm bored? That is creative problem solving. I work on this a lot with clients, is like, what do you just do with your time? How do you figure out who to spend time with? How do you, figure out what you want to do to make yourself feel energized when you don't have somebody there to spend your time with? That is a creative problem-solving skill. And creative problem-solving is a very, very, very different skill and a very practical skill from, these sort of like technical skills that there's much more focus on when you're training to be an idol. So I do really feel for younger Changbin, who had been surrounded by people who were, who could kind of always be the type of sociable he wanted to be, and clearly had a lot of support in the practicalities of being alive, and then, like, kind of suddenly didn't, and didn't necessarily know what to do with that. It's also... it's a real failure on, like, societal behalf to have people be in that point where, their dongseng is like, oh, I can't leave him behind because is he just gonna wither and perish if he's alone,
영화관? 혼자서는 영화관 절대 못 갈 것 같은데. 얘는 근데 혼자서 가요, 현진이는. 와, 신기해. 저는 근데 영화관은 혼자는 절대 못 갈 것 같아요. 멤버들이 같이 가지 않는 이상 전혀. 사실 저희가 둘이서 거기를 가려고 했어요. 레인 수영장이 있어요, 레인. 다 안경 다 차려서 가야 되는 수영장이에요. 그래서 제가 없어가지고 찬이 형한테 빌려가지고 갔는데 휴일, 일주일에 한 번 딱 그날이 휴일인. 어이가 없어가지고 같이 가려 했는데 못 가니까 김샌 느낌이 있어가지고 한번 가고 싶네요. 넌 뭔가 이런 거 있잖아, 살면서 이렇게 말하지 말.
I'd also be really curious, though, to see, and maybe I'll try to ask around and see if he's ever gone into this more at any point that I haven't seen, or maybe they do later here, I don't know, but if he has more insight as to why being alone is so difficult, because it does feel more excessive than just like I get bored by myself or like difficulty with, you know, problem solving. So like it feels more excessive than that. Like this feels like this is a pretty extreme level of I hate being alone. And maybe, you know, maybe it really just is that he really, really, really is understimulated if there are not people around him. And, you know, I don't know. But yeah, that's why I'd be really curious if he has greater insight as to what he actually is like feeling when he's alone, right? Is it just boredom? You know, is it just that understimulation? Is there anxiety, right? Is it anxiety inducing to be alone? Is there something about like, does he get stuck in mental spirals if he's alone? Is there some type of, I don't know, existential dread that settles in? Is there uncertainty? Is there like a sense of like object impermanence, right? That can happen with a lot of people. That's like a really common factor, say with like ADHD, is that there's like this sort of object impermanence around other people. So if there's a lack of people around you, it sort of feels like maybe they'll never come back. There's like all kinds of things. It does feel like a lot. Like that feels like a high level of I need to not be alone. Especially to have gone on for, you know, it sounds like a large portion of his life, if not his entire life. So yeah, I'd be really, really curious if there is any content where he talks about that further or not, because I'd be really curious as to his insight into it.
걸 막 이랬던 거 있어? 나한테?
아 많지.
많아?
응. 연습할 때 가끔 느껴. 형이 살짝 그 다른 멤버랑 뭔가 이렇게
I missed
자리라.
I was too
다른
busy
넌
thinking
뭔가-
about things. Oh right, he was talking about the pool.
넌 뭔가 이런 거 있잖아. 살면서 아 이렇게 말하지 말걸 막
오케이,
이랬던
오케이.
거 있어? 나한테?
아 많지.
많아?
응. 연습할 때 가끔 느껴. 형이 살짝 그 다른 멤버랑 뭔가 이렇게 자리라든지 이런 거에서 막 얘기를 하고 있어. 근데 이제 내가 생각했을 땐 다른 상대방의 말이 맞아. 근데 이제 여기서 형이 이제 형 의견을 계속 고집해서 갈 때 난 이걸 못 참겠거든.
너 이거 막 이렇게 하지. 그치?
그래서 아 근데 형 하는 게 후회돼.
왜 후회돼? 그건 말해야지.
Yep, I agree with Changbin here.
내가 있는 상황에서 내가 껴드니까 형은 2대1인 상황이구나.
너 그렇게 생각을
that's-
하잖아. 그 반대로 난 또 그렇게 생각을 해. 아 이게 사실 내가 기분 나쁠 게 아닌데 왜 이거 연습 끝나고 집 가는 차에서 엘베에서 생각을 해요.
나도 후회해. 아 그 왜 그냥 좀 시간 지나고 나서 그냥 자리 하나 바꾸는 건데 그건 그냥 내가 나중에 얘기할 걸.
어떤 상황을 얘기하는지 네가 얘기하니까 뭔가 알긴 알겠지.
그지?
근데 그거 되게 좀 예전인데?
But that was
최근에는
ages
그런 거
ago.
없었어.
연습생 때.
Yeah, buddy, this doesn't surprise me at all. That Hyunjin maybe holds on to things that he perceives as mistakes for longer than he maybe needs to. That's very, very typical. And yeah, but like he really doesn't need to have that level of anxiety. I'm really glad that Changbin sort of is so good at sort of settling that and just being like, that's silly. You don't need to have that. That was so long ago. And also, I don't care. This is one of those things where like a lot of times people who have a lot of stress about their interactions with other people and how other people perceive them will think much more harshly about their own actions than anybody else is thinking about those actions. That's just super common. And I think it's an experience that most people have some familiarity with. But some people, it is a pretty consistent, like there's sort of a spectrum of how consistent that is between like, yeah, somebody has it happen occasionally. and like it's kind of uncomfortable, but it's fine, versus like somebody is constantly thinking through all of their interactions for everything they could have done wrong and basically regretting every single interaction that they've had. And you know, I've seen people on all sides of that spectrum. But yeah, I'm really glad that Changbin it just seems very, very good at settling people.
한번 내가 너무 급발진을 해서 널 울렸었거든.
나를?
너 그때 울었었어. 그러니까 회사에서 연습하다가 마지막쯤에 뭔가 트러블이 있어서 내가 나와가지고 너한테 막 뭐라고 한 거야. 근데 그때 애가 우는데 너무 서럽게 우는 거야. 그 표정이 계속 떠올라.
지금도?
내가 그때 무슨 상황이었는지 확실하게 기억은 안 나는데, 그러니까 얘 입장에서는 그래도 연습생 때 되게 의지하고 그런 형이 있고 나한테 친근한 형인데 표정이나 말이 갑자기 악마가 돼버리는 걸 본 아이처럼 느껴졌어. 나는.
그땐 그럴 수도 있겠다.
충격이 가시지 않는 표정이었어가지고 약간 그런 게 계속 떠오를 때가 있죠. 약간 사실 현진은 제가 생각했을 때는 자기 주장 확실하게 딱 할 줄 알고.
Changbin really, based on the way that he's talked about his interactions when he was a teenager, it really does seem like he's somebody who grew so much from mistakes made as a teenager, right? Like, he would interact with people in ways that he was not intending on hurting them, but would end up hurting them. And it seems like he's really good at recognizing when that happened, or like when that goes on, and being conscientious about like holding in his mind what that looks like for different people and how different people might become hurt or harmed in different situations. That's a little bit of mental modeling, projecting on my part, right? Like, I don't fully have data 100% to back up what I just said, but that's how it seems to me. It seems like he's quite good at incorporating mistakes into his worldview of who he is and who he wants to be. That, like, he has this sense of the type of person he wants to be, and when he does not reach that bar, instead of really super, like, falling into a shame spiral or something, he goes like, okay, I can't do that again. And he tries to incorporate that into interacting differently in the future, which is like really, that's excellent work, especially for, you know, being able to look back at something when he was that young. You know, how good he was at it when he was 18, 19, I don't really know. I need to watch more content from them at that point, but certainly now he's good at that past introspection. There's another ad in 15 seconds, so I'm gonna drink a drink, I guess. Yeah, the other thing I wanted to say about this anecdote is about Hyunjin. Just, it doesn't surprise me, that situation, just because of what Hyunjin has brought up before in the past of, like, sort of some, like, fear of abandonment that he's implied towards. He's sort of brought this up in his, like, old two kids room with Changbin. His, like, he doesn't approach people when there are problems, because he's had that, like, he's been burned by people in the past with that. And so I can totally see how at that age, if, you know, someone he's really close to and really cares about sort of lashes out at him, having that immediate response of like, oh my God, I'm going to lose this person. They hate me now. This is unsalvageable, right? Like, that very much is in alignment with what he was saying, you know, in his 2019 Two Kids Room.
약간 사실 현진은 제가 생각했을 때는 자기 주장 확실하게 딱 할 줄 알고 확실한 의견들이나 이런 것들을 잘 전달해가지고 좀 설득을 잘 하는 것 같아요. 근데 그런 것들은 계속 가지고 있고, 근데 그런 거 외적으로 좀 유연해진 성격들이 좀 변한 것 같긴 한데 나는 막 이래요 그냥 되게 그치 원래 얘의 말투 이런 느낌이 아니거든. 얘가 풍기는 그런 분위기가 아닌데 요즘 약간 그런 분위기가 좀 흘러나오죠. 약간 현자가 됐나? 약간 해탈했어요. 옛날엔 뭔가 못 넘어가던 그런 일들 같은 거를 그냥 그러려니 마음적으로나 뭔가 좀 여유가 생긴 느낌?
이렇게 사는 게 편하더라고.
That's a really common early 20s like mental shift, is that shift from like teenagerdom has a lot of like really hard black and white thinking. You know, that prefrontal cortex nuance area of the brain is like very slowly growing. It's not really there yet. So just like a lot of stubbornness, a lot of rebellion, a lot of harsh black and white thinking, right? Like part of being a teenager also is testing boundaries and like seeing what happens, learning logical consequences, you know. But as you move into your 20s, into proper adulthood, it's very developmentally appropriate that you start to be like, I don't actually give a shit about that. That's not important. And it's really great actually to be making that move in your mid-20s. A lot of people don't really get the self-insight, self-introspection, or like access to be able to really do that work until like their 30s or even 40s. This is a place where money really, really helps. If you're working really hard just to like survive, you don't tend to get a lot of opportunities to reduce black and white thinking. You're still very much in like a survival state. Having more access to like know that probably you'll be okay. That like your livelihood will be okay. That the people you care about will be okay. That's a really helpful thing for developing in what we would consider like strong, appropriate ways. Very, very useful for actually doing that.
그렇죠. 약간 이렇게 됐고 그리고 개인적으로는 뭔가 나태해지는 순간이 있을 수도 있잖아요.
아, 그렇지.
물론 그 가끔은 그런 시간이 필요할 때도 있지만 근데 그런 순간에 뭔가 좀 계속 열정을 불어 넣어주는 뭔가 타이어에 공기를 넣어주듯이 그런 달릴 수 있게 항상 고맙죠. 고맙고 동생이지만 저는 그냥 가장 최근에 기억나는 거는
I feel like I
고맙죠.
missed that
뭔가 좀
metaphor
계속
or don't
열정을
understand that
불어 넣어주는
metaphor.
뭔가
Am I being too
그렇지.
autistic?
물론 그 그리고 개인적으로는 뭔가 나태해지는 순간이 있을 수도 있잖아요.
아, 그렇지.
물론 그 가끔은 그런 시간이 필요할 때도 있지만 근데 그런 순간에 뭔가 좀 계속 열정을 불어 넣어주는 뭔가 타이어에 공기를 넣어.
I feel like I'm usually very good at metaphors. But I think the autism might be getting to me a little bit on this one. I do not understand this analogy at all. I'm so sorry. It just keeps pumping air. Is it like doing something continuously unnecessarily? I just don't understand the correlation between that and laziness. That doesn't seem like laziness. That seems like working hard unproductively. Changbin is saying that Hyunjin is someone who can give them. The pronouns translation are a bit whack. Oh, I hate when the pronouns translations are whack. It makes everything so confusing. Changbin is saying that Hyunjin is someone who can give them motivation. Oh, I was never gonna figure that out. Thank you so much.
순간이 있을 수도 있잖아요.
아, 그렇지.
물론 그 가끔은 그런 시간이 필요할 때도 있지만 근데 그런 순간에 뭐
Oh, I see. So the you is like a general you. Okay. So I think okay, if I'm understanding this correctly, what's happening is that like on a personal level, sometimes people get a little bit lazy. So like we conceptually sometimes you generally might have moments where you generally get a bit lazy.
순간이 있을 수도 있잖아요.
아, 그치.
물론 그 가끔은 그런 시간이
And like
필요할 때도
sometimes that's
있지만
important.
그런 순간에 뭔가 좀 계속 열정을
But in those
불어넣어주는
moments,
거죠. 타이어에
Hyunjin is like someone pumping air into a tire, so he's building them up to like keep going once they're done resting. Okay. Oh my god, I'm so glad I'm streaming this right now so that somebody could tell me what the fuck was going on. I was never gonna pick that up. Thank you so much. Yeah, the general you versus the specific you is very important there. Yeah, it would have made more sense from a translation perspective to say like sometimes we or sometimes people or whatever. Okay, that's really sweet then. And I could see that, right? Like Hyunjin has a lot of motivation, a lot of energy, a lot of passion. That you know can really like push other people to sort of want to meet him where he's at, because like that's exciting to them too.
그런 달릴 수 있게 항상 고맙죠. 고맙고 동생이지만 저는 그냥 가장 최근에 기억나는 거는 같이 하체를 했나? 말자는 지 얼마 안 된 상태야. 헬스장에 있으면 계단 저기 맨 밑에서 이런 애가 있는데 이러고 있는 밤토리가 하나 있는데 그게 너무 웃긴 거야. 되게 하찮아.
머리 자르고 가장 나보고 바보 같다고 한 사람이 형이었어.
아니 무대에서 너무 멋있지. 무대에서 너무 멋있는데
나 이러고 막 이렇게 입꼬리 막.
아니 현진이가 좀 많이 그 인상이 많이 달라졌죠.
근데 그런 얘기 많이 들어.
그지?
이렇게 순해졌다.
아, 눈빛이
편하게 살자.
I love that Hyunjin is incapable of maintaining a second of eye contact with literally anybody. Like mood. I'm autistic. I get it. But every now and then people will talk about Hyunjin like I always have this issue with like fan edits that are like trying to show Hyunjin like staring at somebody or like using his like resting bitch face to like imply that he's having a certain feeling or something. Like, bro just stares places. Okay? He cannot keep a second of eye contact with another human being. Like, that was like half a second before he started. Like, I think about that Rizbe interview and just his complete inability to. I don't know how he gets his makeup done, okay? I think he just like stares into the distance and vaguely dissociates sometimes, and then people try to like track his eye movement to see where he's looking. And I can tell you, as somebody who is incapable of maintaining eye contact for a single second and taking it seriously, that I so frequently am looking at a wall. I look at a wall all the time. I look at like a random spot on my keyboard. I look at like people will ask me why I'm staring at them, and I'm like, I'm not. I'm looking like 2 feet to your right. I'm not. I did not even perceive your existence in my space. I am so sorry that you thought I was staring at you. That is not what was happening.
편하게 살자. 약간 이런 눈빛? 그냥 그러려니. 그래서 뭐 옛날에는 막 이렇게 불 같았잖아, 성격 자체가. 막 이렇게 야망가에다가 막 이렇게 욕심꾸러기 막 다 내 거야. 지금은 안 그러지. 그냥.
알았어. 근데 다음 컴백 때도 센 표정 지을 수 있겠냐?
아이, 그거.
세게 한번 지어봐봐 그냥. 애가 왜 쌍꺼풀이 진해졌지? 요즘 혜지 현진이 너무 좋네요. 막 이래요 눈빛이. 무대에선 도끼 있는 친구니까 평상시에도 도끼 있으면 너무 인간미가 떨어지잖아요. 지금 너무 좋아요. 해해실실한 현진이.
나는 형이.
I think that's really, and actually, I think that that's really a notable. Okay, so this is episode 6. So this was taken in like March. No. No. Maybe? No. Oh my god, I need to remember what the timelines are on these. My brain isn't doing that very well at this moment. But like, I think especially considering what a hard year, plus a little bit more Hyunjin has had, I think that actually this statement is a lot more meaningful considering, like, taking that into consideration. And I haven't really seen anybody like talk about this conversation since we sort of learned that about Hyunjin, which doesn't surprise me because this came out a long time ago. And, you know, this might have still been a little bit before, like, whenever his hardest moments were. I don't really know, because that's been, like, that timeline has been unclear. 100% fair. Does not need to divulge that information. But we do know that he's been seeing a vocal coach since last year. And so considering what a hard time he's been having, I think, like, Changbin kind of talking about liking this laughy, giggly, smiley Hyunjin is actually, like, really pretty meaningful, right? Because there's probably at this point in time, there were a lot of times when that wasn't necessarily the case. And I think also Changbin talking about, like, you can't take your stage personality with you. Like, it does start to really dig into your human side, as he puts it. And I would sort of talk again just, like, about identity and what it is when you take a stage persona, when you take a built persona and then take it into your personal existence, how much it can really chip away at a sense of self or get in the way of building one if you don't have a strong one yet. And I think that that's also meaningful, like, when you're thinking about, you know, a member who's having a really hard time and who's sort of debating, like, what that means for them and their career, knowing that there is a version of you that exists that is strong and loved outside of your career is really important for making the best decisions for yourself. Because if you don't have that persona outside of that, like, gritty stage persona, then it's easy to feel like, you know, changing the way your career works, or changing the way your voice is, or changing, like, all of these other things, you know, not even just, like, leaving your career, but changing the way you interact with your career. It can feel like fundamentally changing part of who you are, and can feel like you are losing part of your identity, when really, like, it would be changing something really meaningful and really important, but that doesn't mean that there's not a version of you that exists outside of that. So I think that this is actually, I think that if this episode came out now, people would have a lot of feelings about this conversation.
현진이 너무 좋네요. 막 이래요, 눈빛이. 무대에선 도끼 있는 친구니까. 평상시에도 도끼 있으면 너무 인간미가 떨어지잖아요. 지금 너무 좋아요. 해해실실한 현진이.
나는 형이 변했다고 생각하는 부분은 좀 사람이 좀 차분해졌어. 형의 그 생각 그 범위 자체가 넓어진 느낌. 뭔가 되게 심도 있게 생각하고 행동하는 느낌이고, 옛날에는 그냥 어쨌든 형도 약간
급발진이 좀 있었죠. 맞아요.
짝짝짝 이렇게 했었고, 지금은 욱하는 게 아예 없어. 왜냐면 옛날에는 동생들이 막 이렇게 한 3번 정도 돌리면 한 번 겁주고 난 말았잖아.
맞아.
지금은 한 15번까지 봐주는 것 같아. 근데 내가 봤을 때 이 원인을 알겠어. 김승민을 곁에 계속 두자.
It's interesting, because they've sort of said similar things about Chan too, right? That, like, he used to be a lot sharper, and he's become less sort of escalated when things go wrong or when he's stressed. And I think it also says something about, you know, how people expect leadership is supposed to work when they are young and dysregulated and not taught emotional regulation skills and, you know, not taught appropriate ways to both be angry and express anger in like healthy mutualistic ways, versus what they learn leadership becomes over time.
잖아 지금.
너도 한 원인이라고 생각하는데.
나?
윤승민만이 잘못해주는 게 아니고 너도 있고.
아, 네.
너
근데 내가 봤을 때 이 원인을 알겠어. 그럼 김승민을 곁에 계속 두잖아 지금.
너도 한 원인이라고 생각하는데.
나?
윤승민만이 잘못해주는 게 아니고 너도 있고.
아, 네.
한지성 있지. 야, 이 세 명은
참
이렇게
형한테 되게
근데
고마운
거기에
사람이지.
또 거기에 또 어마어마한 또 하나가 있다. 얘는 동생은 아니야. 이민호? 이민호라고. 뭐 이렇게 또 어마어마하죠.
우리가 도와준 거지.
Are they just not gonna tell me details about why these specific people? I'm so tired of them saying things without elaborating. I'm nosy. If you don't want me to know details, don't tell me things.
그러니까 어떤 상황에서도 아유 동생들보다 낫다 뭐 이렇게.
내가 어디 가서도 사실상 그런 게 되게 걱정이 많았던 사람인데 그 선이 하나 딱 넘으면은 그냥 갑자기 사람이 좀 많이
내가 진지해지지.
네, 좀 그렇게 돼버리는 그런 게 있었는데 좀 그런 걸 좀 피하는 법도 찾게 되더라고. 사실 그게 별로 타격이 안 와. 그냥 지금은 멤버들 막 다정한 느낌은 아니에요.
아유 멤버들한테 어떻게 다정해.
진짜 다정한 애는 우리 팀에 없지.
릭스.
릭스가 완전 다정하고.
릭스 말고는 없어.
그나마 방찬?
아 그치 찬이 형.
그리고 생각보다 리노?
리노 형 제일 다정해.
There's no one sweet on our team, except half our team. You losers. God, they love each other so much. They're fucking losers. I hate them. I hate friendship.
생각보다 리노요?
그 리노 형이 살짝 그렇게 다정한 모습 몇 번 보이니까 예민해 보여도
맞아. 이뻐.
Maybe just all of you are sweet sometimes, especially when you're drunk. Maybe you all have a secret sweetie inside of you that comes out when you're inebriated. Have you considered this?
넌 멤버들이랑 좀 고민 상담을 많이 하나? 요즘 잘 안 하지?
맞아. 그래서 뭐 딱히 고민 같은 게 없어. 그냥 유일한 고민은 그냥 팀이 어떻게 될까. 형이랑도 한창 막 우리의 지금 현재 뭐 어떤 그런 것들에 대해서나 뭐 앞으로의 비전 이런 얘기 많이 했었다가 최근에는 뭐
올라가는데. 나도 올해 목표가 무탈이라고 했거든. 그냥 큰 일 안 생기고 뭔 일 안 생기고 그냥 무탈하게 지내는 것만으로도 되게 행복한 일인 것 같다는 걸 너무 느끼더라고.
That's such a nice goal that you have absolutely no control over. Like, just, like, I get it, man, but, like, you have no power over whether there's no trouble. That's not a goal. I think if a client came to me and was like, my goal for the next 6 months is to just live a troubleless life. Like, no real fights, no real tension, no real troubles. I'd be like, you might consider that you are setting yourself up for disappointment. Unless you are able to, unless we're talking about a more restrictive version of the word trouble, right? Like, maybe what we're talking about is that I will not have excessively dysregulated emotions in response to troubles that come about, right? Or perhaps, but even then, you can't be in control of if somebody gets seriously injured and falls into a coma, you know? And I would say that a reasonable reaction to that is to feel troubled. Obviously, that's a really extreme reaction, but there are things that happen in our lives that we do not have control over, where the reasonable reaction is to feel troubled. So, like, that's like a very nice, optimistic goal that totally would lead to happiness, but that we can't, like, we can't achieve that on our own power. We can't even achieve that, like, with our community's own power. We just don't have the control necessary for it. So that's sweet, and not what I would generally recommend to be a resolution, because it really is just sort of setting you up for disappointment. Now, if you're like, what I'd really like is to not have any serious problems as we go on this world tour. Like, it would be really great if we could have a chill year. You know, that's hopeful. You can hope for that. You can sort of like have that dream, and you can try to set yourself up for success as much as possible. And that's a little bit different, but like, yeah, I wouldn't recommend somebody having the goal of troublelessness. There's an ad in 30 seconds. God. We can keep watching this. Maybe we'll finish it. That'd be exciting. To get through 2 minutes.
찬찬히 유연하게 흘러갔으면 좋겠어.
천천히 이렇게. 저 언젠간 또 뭐 고민이 생기겠죠.
I like that I went on this whole thing about like, that's not a realistic goal, and then just immediately Hyunjin was like, yeah, I don't know about that.
그때 창빈 형한테 이제 좀 자문을 구한다던가 그렇게 할 수 있으니까 의지가 되는 형인 것 같고, 형이 지금의 스케줄을 있게끔 한 것 같아요, 저는. 그리고 창빈 형도 참 시행착오가 많았을 텐데 그럼에도 불구하고.
And that's really cute, actually, knowing like the resolution he had with Seungmin. So yeah, somebody in chat agreed that this probably was recorded around March. So glad to know my timeline's probably about accurate there, which was a little bit before he and Seungmin made up. And yeah, rewatching this and knowing that like he's saying, you know, I'm sure at some point worries will come up again. And they definitely would. There were definitely worries happening here, but like I guess they just weren't on his mind right then. And that like we know that Changbin was there, like helping conflict resolve that relational repair between Hyunjin and Seungmin. I think it's like really, really sweet that we know that he said this beforehand. You know, if this were a written story, this would have been foreshadowing. It just shows how accurate, right, and how well they know themselves and each other. That, like, okay, we know that Changbin sort of has this intention to not take things really, really hard when they come up, and to try to move through them in a way that, like, allows for peace and happiness, and that, you know, Hyunjin feels really, really, really intense feelings and probably will continue to do that and continue to have worries, and just knowing that he can rely on Changbin to like balance that.
그럴 때 창빈 형한테 이제 좀 자문을 구한다던가 그렇게 할 수 있으니까 의지가 되는 형인 것 같고, 형이 지금의 스케줄을 있게끔 한 것 같아요, 저는. 그리고 참 이 형도 참 시행착오가 많았을 텐데 그럼에도 불구하고 계속해서 멤버들 챙기고 이렇게 나아가려는 모습이 되게 존경스러웠어요. 이 형 성격 자체가 무언가를 이렇게 짊어지려는 성격이 아니거든요. 왜냐면 자기 할 일도 바쁘고 애초에 멀티도 잘 안 되는 사람인데도 불구하고 그 멤버들을 사랑한다는 그거 하나만으로 막 멤버들의 짐까지 다 같이 챙겨가려고 그러고 하는 모습이 되게 존경스러워요.
I suspect it's also true that because Changbin, like, doesn't have a lot of space to carry a lot of burdens, and, you know, is a very, like, hyper fixation type of person. Like, he does hyper focus on one thing and he does not multitask well. That this also means that in order to help and support his members, that in order to help them grow, in order to be the type of Hyung he wanted to be, in order to be the type of friend he wanted to be, he sort of had to learn what it was important for him to step in and help with, and what, you know, his members needed to sort of figure out for themselves. Probably had to learn some amount of delegation, right? Like, when you don't have the capacity to over caretake, right? Because people who really, really love, you know, their community can end up in this space of over caretaking that is not valuable. When you don't have the space to over caretake or do too much emotional labor, it can be really actually like one of the best scenarios for everybody, because in order for it to work out well, there has to be a prioritization of when different people are struggling and need help, or when, you know, the help that they need is something that they really need somebody else's emotional support for, or when it's something that, like, a different person would be a better support for, or when it's something that they can actually figure out themselves. So I suspect that, yeah, like, as Hyunjin said, not just the trial and error, but the requirement to do trial and error due to just, like, not having the space to hold all of it, probably was really beneficial.
되게 의지되고.
스테이가 지금 내 바로 앞에 없어도 뭔가 그런 생각이 드는 것처럼, 현진이도 저한테 그런 존재? 옆에 없어도 난 얘랑 인생을 계속 같이 해왔구나, 계속 하고 있구나라는 걸 계속 느끼게 해주는 존재라서.
핸드폰 갖고 왔어?
없어.
자,
Changbin is actually a very, very sentimental person. He just doesn't, like, express it, I think, in ways that we typically think about sentimentality. But, like, if you think about the way that he's talked about Seungmin, and the ways that he's talking about Hyunjin, the ways that he talks about, like, keeping members on his mind, like, he actually does seem like he is emotionally very sentimental about the people he loves and the people he has to take care of. It's just that it's not as emotive or as externalized as, say, like, Seungmin's sentimentality, or, like, Hyunjin's sentimentality, or Chan's sentimentality, or, you know, even Felix's sentimentality, right? It's quieter, but very strong.
가.
가보자고?
하나, 둘, 셋. 됐어. 아, 배불러.
Did he just eat all of... He definitely ate, like, all of those rice cakes to me. I love...
하나, 둘, 셋.
I'd love Hyunjin using kids' rooms to just...
아, 배불러.
Wow, he really did. Good job. Good job.
안녕, 창빈. 참, 형이랑은 추억이 정말 많은데 나랑 놀 땐 놀고 진지한 대화를 할 땐 누구보다 진심이라 좋아. 앞으로도 나랑 그리고 멤버들이랑 함께 오래오래 함께 있자. 행복하자.
Cute. I cannot read his handwriting.
형은 항상
Shit.
여기 있으니까 언제라도 기대렴. 사랑함. 비니.
Yeah. Yeah, Changbin's sentimentality is maybe not through the written language in this format. Maybe for songwriting more so. Oh, they're cute. They're cute. I like them. I love their bestie energy. I love how much shit they give each other. Everything about it. A+. A+. How long was that? Yeah, the constant saga of Hyunjin writing a whole novel and everybody else being like, Hyunjin, You're great. Bye. What was I looking for? I was looking for that. That's what I was looking for. Oh my gosh, I got through that in like a normal hour and a half. It didn't take me 2.5 fucking hours this time. I do not understand how I spent 2.5 fucking hours. I have not rewatched that recording yet, and I don't know that I want to. I'm scared. I am scared. I spelled no wrong. That's fine. Have I already watched this? I have, haven't I? I already reacted to this. How did I forget that? Don't know.